Part 16. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 157. Vivi, Sanji, Nami, and the cooperating officers entered Katla's city under the escort of the rebels. The inside of the city is still relatively shabby. Many old-fashioned buildings along the street are simply repaired and continue to be used. Residents in the city also serve the rebel army specifically, helping the rebel army transport and manufacture various needed items. Wai Wei can use the cloak she is wearing to cover her face. After all, many people here still know her. When Alabasta was peaceful in the past, people from all parts of the country went to the capital Aruba to worship the king. So many people in the kingdom know what Wai Wei looks like. If he was exposed casually here, it might trigger an attack by some people who extremely hated the king. In addition, Wai Wei also needs to beware of the people in the Baroque studio, because Wai Wei is the person who knows the culprit of the Alabasta Civil War, so the Baroque studio does everything possible to get rid of her. It is impossible for the Baroque studio not to have placed an undercover agent here with the rebels. After passing through a section of the urban area, the team passed through a very wide square. Enough to accommodate thousands of people. Countless people were gathering in this square at this time, and someone was giving a big speech in the center of the square. This is... Wai Wei said suddenly. She suddenly remembered something. Wai Wei has also been to most of the cities in the kingdom, and she has also been to Kataya. However, after the vicissitudes of the Civil War, and Katla is an old city, it already looks very dilapidated. But Wai Wei can recognize this square. This square was built by her father, Nefertali Cobra. It is called King's Renaissance Plaza. That is to say, Cobra once built this square in order to revive old Alabasta cities like Katlia. Unfortunately, civil war broke out not long after the construction of this square. The whole country is in terror, not to mention the construction of these old cities. At the King's Fuxing Square at this time, the speaker stood on a high platform and spoke to thousands of people below. Everyone, the king's stupidity has put the country into crisis. We have to resist. A king who only cares about himself and commits absurd acts is not worthy of ruling this country. Nefertari Cobra, a hypocrite, his misbehavior on the throne caused Alabasta to fall into crisis. So we have to overthrow him. In order to monopolize precipitation and strengthen his rule, he actually used dancing powder. A loud rebellion officer was there relentlessly preaching against the populace the evils of King Cobra's rule. This is the propaganda offensive of the rebellion. In addition to the battle on the battlefield, the rebel army has incited countless people to hate the king through various propaganda and mobilization. Tens of thousands of people served the rebel army because of this mobilization, which made the strength of the rebel army continue to expand, and eventually it was on the offensive in the Civil War. Even a large part of the king's army has become a rebel army. Wai Wei's heart twitched for a while when she heard this, and she turned her face away. The propaganda on the square continued, and the high-pitched voice of the officer continued to be heard through the loudspeaker. Dear people, King Wapol of the Drum Kingdom was overthrown in a revolutionary war. He himself also died a violent death. This is also an inspiration to Alabasta, which is also facing a tyrant's rule. We must let Nefertali. The tyrant Cobra will meet the same fate as Wapol. Please cheer me on. After the officer's propaganda, thousands of people on the square raised their fists and cheered. Down with Cobra. Tyrants must die. Long live the rebels. Justice belongs to us. Capture of Arapena. The shouts were earth-shattering, as if they were about to push everything down. Wai Wei, who was sitting in the carriage, tried her best to cover her ears, but those voices kept coming. Her beloved father, Dr. Wang, worked hard for the prosperity and development of Alabasta. But because of the evil done by the murderer behind the scenes, the people regard him as a tyrant, and everyone can't wait to get rid of him. This pain is worse than 1,000 cuts. Sanji looked at the excited crowd with his eyes, and quickly sat down beside Wai Wei. Vivi, don't be like this. Remember what our purpose is, Sanji said comfortingly. Wei Wei gritted her teeth and tried hard to hold back her tears. Well, I'm fine, Vivi said. The procession continued on, passing through some more blocks. It's finally the end. They came to a white marble building that was full of bullet holes and cracks. Apparently it had been destroyed in the previous civil war. Everyone, we have arrived, the officer in charge of escort said. Vivi, Sanji, and Nami looked at the building ahead. The three of them got off the carriage, and the cooperating officers also got off their horses. Sanji always vigilantly observes the surroundings, beware of possible dangers. Follow me, everyone, the officer continued to lead the way. This white building was also heavily guarded. The officer walked to the front, and after talking with the fully armed officer, he was allowed to pass. Vivi, Sanji, Nami, and the cooperating officers were able to enter. Entering the white building, you will soon arrive at the hall. This hall is full of documents, and some officers of the rebel army work here. When they saw someone coming in, they all stopped working. There was a big table at the end of the room, and a young man was sitting there behind it. He looked at everyone with eyes full of persistence and scrutiny. Sanji also looked at this man with his right eye under the curled eyebrows. The other's face was very resolute, even a little rough. Obviously it was caused by wind and sand in the desert. He has short hair very neatly. He is wearing a dark red coat behind him, holding a very long sword in his hand, but the sword is always in the scabbard. But the most obvious thing is the scar on the left eye. Nami on the side was a little uneasy seeing the aura of the people around her. But to Sanji's surprise, Vivi kept covering her head with her cloak. The military officer who led the way said, the leader of Kosha, and other officials, the mediation envoy of Drum Kingdom has arrived. Kosha waved his hand and said, go down. The officer hurried down. Sanji looked at this young man named Kosa, who did not expect that he was the leader of the rebel army that swept across Alabasta at a young age. Kosa looked at everyone, but when his gaze fell on Wei Wei, he suddenly trembled for a while. This feeling in the dark is like seeing an old friend. You are the mediators of the Seigo Kingdom, Kosa asked first. Sanji nodded and said, exactly. We are here to mediate the civil war in Alabasta. Kosa looked at Sanji. Although he was the leader of the rebel army, he clearly felt that the other man was a man full of momentum, able to knock down powerful opponents suddenly. You want to mediate, but I can tell you directly that it is still impossible. Although Kosa's tone was calm, he did not mean to waver at all. Then you might as well listen to what I have to say. Suddenly Wei Wei's voice sounded. Kosa was stunned. He was surprised to see that the man Silk had known before pulled the cloak away from his head. Wei Wei, the princess of Alabasta, looked at him right now. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 158. Vivi looked at Kosa, her watery eyes looked at him. Kosa, you are now the leader of the rebel army. I didn't expect our former partners to meet in this way, Wei Wei said. Sanji turned his face to look at Wei Wei, thinking that Wei Wei and Cao Sha actually knew each other. Cao Sha looked at Wei Wei, and the childhood memories kept echoing in his mind. Vivi and he used to be childhood friends, both of them are full of dreams of building a better Alabasta in the future. Unexpectedly, one is still the princess of Alabasta, but the other is already the leader of the rebel army. Is this fate or a coincidence? Fate is indeed too tricky. Now Wei Wei and Cao Sha are looking at each other. Although the eyes of the two are calm, they are fighting fiercely in their hearts. Wei Wei, you have indeed grown up. You are a very dignified princess, Kosa said calmly after a long time. Kosa, you are now the leader of the rebel army. I didn't expect the opposition forces in Alabasta to be so young, Wei Wei said calmly. Kosa stood up and looked at Wei Wei. Okay, Your Excellency the princess. You can speak now. Just say what you want to say, Kosa said. Vivi looked at Kosa, looking straight into his eyes. You rebels are really unwilling to cease the war, it's just a truce. Do you really think that the civil war for so many years was really caused by the king? Is the dancing powder really used by the king and them? Here, I can tell you. Really the person who used dancing powder and created a series of crises is Sand Crocodile of the Kabuki Wai said firmly. Hearing the name, everyone in the hall started talking. Crocodile, how is that possible? Why did he do this? How could Shishibukai, the king consecrated by the world government, do this? But Crocodile is indeed suspect. It's just unbelievable. The cotters in the hall started talking one after another. Kosa looked at Vivi and asked, "You said it was Crocodile who did it? Then he has been in the Rainland and occasionally fought against pirates. He has never participated in the Alabasta Civil War. Can you explain who he is? How to do it?" Wai said, "Crocodile has a Baroque studio, which is a mysterious criminal group. They secretly used dancing powder to frame the king, making the people mistakenly think that the king gathered rainwater for his own use. And created a series of incidents, making it escalated and turned into a civil war." As soon as Wai's words came out, the expressions of the rebel cotters in the hall changed drastically. The cotters are all talking to each other. After all, although the Baroque studio is deeply hidden, some tales will still be exposed to some extent. And some irrationality still exists. Kosa continued to look at Wai and asked, "Then do you have any evidence?" Wai didn't speak, but opened a backpack on her body, and took out a stack of documents inside. "Here, let's take a look." Wai handed out the document. A guard in the hall handed Kosa the document. Kosa returned his gaze to the document in his hand. He flipped through these documents, which contained all kinds of information and photos that Wai collected in the Baroque studio. The photos reveal the inside story of Baroque studio and a plot to overthrow Alabasta. Kosa looked serious, and looked at all the documents almost without leaving a single word in his eyes. The cotters in the hall were talking about it, and some were waiting to check the documents. But behind a relatively remote table in the hall, a gray-haired rebel cotter took out a small encrypted phone bug from behind the desk, with the pattern of the Baroque studio impressively printed on it. The encrypted telegram was sent out quickly. Kosa checked for a long time, and finally handed over the document to another cotter on the side to check. Kosa looked at Wai again, and said, "These really look very real. It's hard for me to really judge whether it's true or not. But what I'm going to say next is the really serious thing." Vivi, Sanji's expression became very serious, and he listened carefully. Alabasta has gone through several years of brutal civil war. Now the king's army and the rebel army are at odds. And the people who support both sides are also very hostile. Even if it is successfully proved that Crocodile is the real culprit behind the scenes, the current situation it is already like a flood dam, and it cannot be blocked. Therefore, if this matter is forcibly announced to the army and people on the rebel side, it is tantamount to declaring that the sacrifices for several years are meaningless. For several years, whether it is a big claim or a small personal affair, there is endless hatred accumulated from both public and private aspects. Therefore, once such a thing is announced, the rebel army may first split internally and continue the war. Alabasta can't really get peace, Kosa said earnestly. Both Vivi and Sanji looked at Kosa with serious faces. The current situation is obvious, just the hatred accumulated over the years of war and the bloodshed has already brought Alabasta into a situation where it is difficult to turn back. So now if it is hard to prove that the past few years have been played and applauded by a former national hero, then I am afraid it will cause even greater chaos and unstoppable turmoil. Wai's complexion was very ugly, he and Kosa looked at each other. Both of them knew that Alabasta was already in a mess. Sanji looked at Wai, who was extremely anxious, and then at Kosa. "Hey, you can't continue to make mistakes like this," Sanji said. Wai looked at Kosa again, and said after a moment of silence, "In this case, maybe the situation will continue until Crocodile is not eliminated. But what I want to say is a temporary truce. This is fine. Kosa looked at her and said, can a truce really solve the problem? Wei said, don't underestimate the truce. A temporary respite can ease the situation and create opportunities for better solutions. Kosa looked at Wei, and after a long silence, he said to the other cotters in the hall, everyone, I think we can rest for a while. These cotters were shaken by the current situation and some doubts, and they were all in hesitation. However, some people immediately objected. I object, Chief Kosa. How can we stop the attack like this after we have spent countless blood in the past few years? Now the king's army is only completely passive defense. If we try to attack the opponent again, we will completely fail. A burly man with a full face Huzie's cotter stood up and said. I also object. Now the general mobilization order has been issued. All the manpower and material resources that the rebel army can mobilize are in operation. If it stops like this, all the previous achievements will be wasted. Moreover, our morale and prestige will be seriously damaged. Even if we have a truce now, the people we all have to carry guns to attack Aruba. A fat but strong cotter with scars on his face stood up and said. After that, several cotters came forward to oppose it. Kosa looked at them, and then at Wei. Vivi's eyes were examining his judgment. Okay, everyone. The rebel army is still in the upper hand, but our advantage is not absolute. So we need to rest for more time. As for the angry people, I will personally appease them. Ko Sheong is very calm and unquestionable, said in a tone. Kosa is not without dignity as the leader of the rebel army at a young age. Not long after, the sound in the hall stopped. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 159. Kosa's firm position, as well as the current doubts and some complicated issues, made these cotters not have much objection. Kosa looked at Vivi and Sanji again, and said, okay, we can stop the war temporarily. But if there is still no better solution to the problem in the end, then the flames of war will reignite. Seeing that the goal was achieved, Wei also breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, we will definitely be able to solve the problem in the end, Wei said as if promising. One by one, Sanji also showed a relaxed expression on his face, and this time his goal was finally achieved. As long as there is a truce here, then it depends on what happens to Rog and Sauron. Each division of labor to complete their own goals, this is success. But at this time, the gray-haired senior cotter from before, or the undercover agent of the Baroque Studio.it is already constantly sending out information with encrypted phone bugs. Kosa continued to look at Wei, and said, okay, since this is the case, I also need some work so that the troops can temporarily cease fighting. Kosa began to arrange for the cotters to issue an order to suspend the attack and extend the rest period. Sanji took out the phone bug from his clothes and started communicating with Rog in the Kingdom of Newport. Rog, we have already achieved success, and now the rebel army is willing to cease fighting. Vivi from the King's army also sent a sprinter to personally deliver a letter. Sanji communicated with Rog. There was a reply quickly from the other side. Then congratulations to you all. We have already arrived at King's Newport, but we encountered the attack of the Baroque Studio. Some losses are just a successful defeat of the opponent. Sauron and I are all fine, Rog said. I'm not worried about that green algae head, as long as Usopp and Chopper are fine. But we haven't encountered Baroque Studio here yet, Sanji said. Then you must be careful. Baroque Studio is now a huge threat. They may be lurking in every corner of Alabasta. They may even get into the rebel army and the King's army, Rog said. We will definitely pay attention to this. I will pay full attention to the surrounding movements. I will not let Vivi and Nami encounter any danger, Sanji said. Okay, then Sanji. You have to stabilize the situation extremely, and we will do our best to solve Crocodile as soon as possible, Rog said. Okay, you have to work hard. Otherwise, I can't spare you brats, Sanji said half-jokingly. Then the two sides ended the communication, and Sanji is now full of energy. After all, it is basically settled here now. Always beware of Baroque Studios though. Vivi then talked to Sanji as well. What, Rog and the others were attacked by Baroque Studio? Wei asked. Yes, but he didn't give me more details. But obviously they have been attacked a lot, and we also need to take precautions. After all, both the rebel army and the king's army may have people from the Baroque Studio, Sanji said. Wei continued, you really need to be careful like this. If you run fast and get to Aruba, it will be fine. If he looks like that, he has an encrypted phone bug on him. My father or other confidant ministers have read the autographed letter, will respond with a phone bug later. I hope that duck can give me some strength. It's always good to eat and drink, so run faster, Sanji said. Don't worry, you can run fast, Wei said confidently. After the rebels on Katrea's side were willing to cease fighting, Kosa and the Cotters began to order each unit and area to continue resting and recuperating. In the afternoon, it was almost sunset time. Deep in the northeast desert of the Kingdom of Alabasta, the majestic capital of Arubina still has that ancient majesty under the setting sun. Arubina, the capital of the kings of Alabasta for thousands of years, was built on a huge rock. Stairs hundreds of meters high extend down from the front gate of the huge city. On the high city wall, groups of burly soldiers of the king's army are fully armed, and groups of cannons are aiming at the front, capable of annihilating all incoming enemies. Because of the civil war, most of the elite troops of the king's army have been concentrated in Arubina and nearby urban agglomerations. Like the pyramids in Alabasta, Arubina is a magnificent relic that has not fallen down for thousands of years. It is both the witness of the king and the backbone of the country. Especially after the Nefertari family ruled here, there has not been a large-scale war here. However, the unprecedented civil war in recent years has put this ancient city under unprecedented threat. Despite the threat of war, everything in the city of Arubina is still stable and peaceful, and people's lives and work are still going on. King Cobra once swore to make every inch of land under his rule safe. In the king's army sentry on the high city wall, there are always people watching with binoculars. Always be on guard against any emergencies. A sentry in the binoculars saw a figure coming from the south running quickly in the desert. This figure runs surprisingly fast, which is beyond the reach of any human being, especially in this desert. Something is approaching, the sentry shouted to the others. An officer hurried over and asked, "What did you find?" The officer hastened to use the binoculars to watch the distant scene himself. Sure enough, a speeding figure in the desert was heading towards the royal capital in the north. With his common sense, the figure was definitely an Alabasta desert creature. When it comes to speed in a desert environment, Alabasta's biology is unmatched in the world. In addition to this officer, more and more other sentry posts also discovered this figure. Even the soldiers who came to guard the city wall in the end could see this speeding figure with their own eyes. Prepare cannons and machine guns at the main entrance to the south of the city wall. The officer in charge of the main entrance to the south gave the order. The cannons on the tall city wall began to turn under mechanical control, and the machine guns also aimed ahead. This figure kept rushing over. As they approached, the officer raised his hand and prepared to give an order. "Wait a minute," the garrison officer finally cancelled the order. He was surprised to see that it was a fast-running duck that had rushed to the front and almost disintegrated. Running fast is a kind of desert duck unique to Alabasta, which can run extremely fast in the desert. And this kind of duck is also considered rare, and almost all of them are protected animals by the kingdom. But this duck that runs fast is very similar to Princess Weiwei's duck. This officer had also seen Princess Wei sitting on the back of a duck before. It was already a few years ago, but that impression was too unforgettable. After all, a princess would actually ride on the back of a duck. Rare in the world. This is Princess Wei's running speed. Open the city gate quickly, the garrison officer ordered. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Li Er a Dream. Chapter 160. As the garrison officer gave the order, the south main door on the several hundred meters of Arapena began to open quickly. At this time, after a long journey, he ran fast and rushed to the bottom of the ladder. The duck rushed here after an arduous desert trip, and finally saw the end. It lowered its head and drank the can of special drink hanging around its neck in one gulp. In the middle of the desert, running fast has always been very economical to drink these thirst-quenching drinks. Now that it's the finish line anyway, drink up the rest. Ga ran fast and now filled with amazing momentum, he shouted upwards. The duck turned on its full horsepower and ran up very quickly. The hundreds of meters of stairs are actually like flat ground under the fast running. Some of the defenders on the city wall were dumbfounded. For a fast runner, this is nothing. It has climbed straight cliffs. Running fast and running all the way, finally rushed to the huge south main entrance above the stairs. A large number of heavily armed garrisons stood at the opened gate, and these people were surprised to see that they rushed here. After the duck rushed here, Yuli rushed several tens of meters. Finally, feeling tired, I ran fast, and finally stopped. After running almost to a stop, he lay on the ground panting for a while. After resting for a while, it stood up again and looked around. Ga. Seeing the king's army surrounding him, he finally breathed a sigh of relief after running so fast. The garrison officer who was in charge of the main entrance came over. The garrison officer saw the exhausted but still full of strength running fast. The garrison officer walked to the side of the sprinter and looked at him. "Hey, you seem to be Princess Wei's duck, right?" said the garrison officer. After running fast, he quickly shouted, "Ga." This is tantamount to admission. The garrison officer understood the meaning of running fast and continued to ask, "Then let me ask you, why is Princess Wei not with you? Is it because you are just delivering messages for her?" He ran so fast that he nodded and shouted, "Ga." Now it can be confirmed that the fast running is to deliver a letter to Princess Wei. The garrison officer had a happy expression on his face. "That's great. I once received instructions from the Minister of Defense of the Kingdom, Bell. He said that Princess Wei might communicate here in a special way." "All right, I will notify Lord Bell immediately," the garrison officer said. The garrison officer quickly took out a phone bug and started communicating. "Are you from Belda? My Colonel Suk is responsible for the defense of the southern main entrance of Arapena. Please come here quickly, because Princess Wei's fast-running duck suddenly arrived here. I hope you will check the information it brought quickly," said the garrison officer. There was a reply soon. "Well, you said Princess Wei sent her to Arapena as fast as possible." "Okay, I'll go quickly," a voice whistling like a falcon in the desert said. "I am waiting for you all the time," the garrison colonel named Suke said. Colonel Suke hung up the phone bug, and then looked to run fast. The duck now looked as if it was about to die, which immediately startled him. "Hey, run fast, what's wrong with you?" Colonel Suk said in shock. He ran fast and shouted like a groan, "Ga." Colonel Suke suddenly thought again and quickly issued an order, "Hurry up and prepare food and drinking water. Run fast, hurry up." Yes, the soldiers around him quickly took action. Under this situation, everyone will understand that after a long march in the desert, even a fast runner in the desert is very tired and needs rest, water, and food. Then Colonel Suk ordered to close the gate quickly. The thick, meter-high south main gate was closed again with a sound of friction. The royal capital on this huge rock has turned into an impenetrable fortress. Those who ran fast were picked up on a stretcher by 4 burly soldiers and carried to a tower on the city wall. Soldiers quickly brought it several large barrels of drinking water, and many plates of fruit. After seeing this, Run Kui quickly stood up. Ga. Run fast and gobble water and eat fruit. The duck was indeed exhausted just now, but it was more of a joke for everyone. After all, such delicious food can be served quickly. On the top of the palace in Arupana, a man in white robes quickly transformed. His arms and legs turned into wings, and his feet turned into bird claws. His body completely turned into a huge desert falcon, with thick brown feathers covering his dual wheels and his whole body. The head also became like a huge falcon. The man who transformed into a giant falcon spread his wings and began to fly into the sky. There is always a giant falcon flitting across the sky in Alabasta. Many people consider him the patron saint of Alabasta. The patron saint of Alabasta has guarded the royal family and the kingdom for generations. Whenever the kingdom is in danger, he will stand up and soar between the sky and the earth, not afraid of being smashed to pieces. Flying in the sky is Bel, one of the 3 guardian ministers of Alabasta Kingdom. It has turned into a giant falcon and soars high above the sky of Arubana. Now the sun is setting in Barubana, but the orange-red sunlight shines on the city. Everything in it is so peaceful and full of beauty. Bel soared in front of the red sunset, which was only half left, and it looked particularly spectacular. It's like a guardian messenger sent by the sun. Even when the sun sets in Aruba, he will still guard everything. Bel spread his wings and soared towards the southern main gate. With that extremely high speed, Bel finally reached the city wall above the southern main gate. On the city wall, Bel's giant falcon landed. Bel's body changed rapidly, from the beast form of the falcon to the human form. This is a slender but strong man in a white robe. At his waist is a long desert-style knife. His eyes have 2 long black patterns. Like an ancient totem. When the surrounding soldiers saw him, they quickly saluted. Lord Bel. Many soldiers knelt down to salute. Bel waved his hand and said crisply, "No need to be polite, let me see Colonel Suk quickly." The soldiers hurriedly led the way, and Bel quickly came to the tower with swift strides. "Meet Colonel Suk here." "I have met Mr. Bel," Colonel Suke saluted. "You said it was Princess Waiwei who ran fast, let me see it quickly." "There is something to be dealt with quickly. Princess Waiwei must have given us very important information," Bel said. Colonel Suke hurriedly said, "Yes, Run Fast has been here all the time." Then Colonel Suke hurriedly led the way. "Now is an extremely important moment." Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee Er A Dream. Chapter 161. Colonel Suk took Bel to the room where he was resting. As soon as they entered the room, the 2 saw various wooden barrels and many empty plates lying on the ground. Running Fast is lying on a bed with a bulging stomach and eyes to rest. The duck gobbled it up for a while, and after eating and drinking, it lay down on the bed to rest wantonly. Bel could tell at a glance that it was Princess Vivi's horse that ran faster than Karu. "Run fast," Bel said. After running so fast, he immediately sat up when he heard the sound like a desert falcon. Ga. He was a little surprised at how fast he ran, and in front of him was Bel, one of the Alabasta King's guard ministers. There are 3 bodyguards of King Cobra, namely Akaram, Gawker, and Bel. The 3 of them are courtiers who are the backbone of the king and even the entire king. Bel looked at Run Kui and continued to ask, "Run Kui, has Princess Vivi arrived in Alabasta?" "If you run fast, you will immediately nod your head and shout, 'Ga.' You help Princess Waiwei deliver the letter, then give me her letter. I will hand it over to His Majesty the King," Bel said. "Run fast and spread its wings, there is an encrypted envelope under the root of the right wing. And tied to the wings." Bel saw the letter and unscrambled it, but of course he didn't check it. "This letter is very important." "But does Princess Waiwei have any other important items?" Bel asked. Running fast, he patted a bag hanging on its abdomen, and took out a phone bug from it. Bell also took it over to check it, and then said, "It seems that it is for communication. This is it. It is not too late, I will send these two things to the palace. By the way, I will take you there too." As it ran fast, its expression immediately changed, and it yelled, "Gah!" Colonel Suker on the side asked Bell and said, "Sir, you should leave now. Everything is very critical now." "We must go back immediately," Bell said. Bell immediately took the runner out of the room and the tower. At the flat area on the top of the city wall, Bell quickly changed his body. He is an animal devil fruit ability user. And it's a bird fruit. It's in the form of a falcon. It is one of only 5 flying abilities in the world. Bell directly changed from human form to giant falcon in beast form. "Okay, let's go." Bell grabbed the duck with 2 giant paws and ran quickly. He picked up the duck and started flying to the palace in the city. It seemed uncomfortable to be picked up when it was running so fast, but it could only keep making dissatisfied cries of "Ga." Colonel Suke watched as Bell ran away quickly, and then ordered his subordinates to return to work. Bell was flying quickly over Aruba. Running fast and seeing the scenery below, my whole body was trembling with fright, for fear that I would fall down at any moment. But what a superb flying skill Bell is, the things that his men can fall have not yet been born. The sun continued to set in the sky of Arubana, and by the time Bell ran almost to the top of the palace, there was only the last gleam of the setting sun. "Okay, we're here." Bell threw the speedster down, then quickly landed on the top of the palace and returned to human form. Bell led them to the palace quickly. Inside the palace, in the magnificent political hall, a very long red carpet ends, and a middle-aged man sits on a gorgeous throne. The middle-aged man wore a simple but solemn robe. His body is thin but burly, and his face is full of wrinkles caused by hard work. Those eyes are already very tired, but there is a kind of never giving up. This middle-aged man is Nefertali Cobra, king of Alabasta. This king once wanted to lead his people to build a beautiful and prosperous kingdom, and worked diligently. But a bloody civil war that started a few years ago completely shattered everything. This bloody civil war turned former friends into enemies, former relatives were killed, and former ideals were dashed. All that was before has come to naught except death and constant war. Even so, King Cobra is still desperately trying to save everything. But the war is far beyond what he and anyone can control. Brutal massacres were staged every day. In addition to the fighting between the king's army and the rebel army, some other local forces in the kingdom also began to move around, secretly planning their own interests. Over the past few years, Cobra, who is only in his 40s, has gained astonishing wrinkles, making him look like a 60-year-old man. Cobra turned his head and looked at a burly and scary man standing aside. This man was wearing a long robe, with long black hair and a face like a huge jackal. There is a very long sword on the waist. The man's eyes were piercing, and he looked around like a jackal. If anything wanted to hurt the king, he would detect it and kill it. "Jaka, what's the situation with the southern rebels recently?" Cobra asked. "This man is Gaka, one of Alabasta's 3 major guard ministers." Jaka respectfully said to Cobra, "Your Majesty, the rebel army is always in a state of preparation. They are in the process of repairing." Cobra's expression was very complicated after hearing this. Although the rebel army has been in a stable state recently, the two sides have been in a state of confrontation. But the more things go like this, the more brutal battle they will face next. The rebels already control most of the southeastern part of the kingdom and have also penetrated into many other areas. And with troops, they are on the offensive. Now the rebels are in the upper hand and have taken the initiative in the war. Now the king's army is defending Arubana with all its strength, and has fallen into a passive state. And the longer the time dragged on, the more fully prepared the rebel army was, and the coming battle would be extremely cruel. Jaka looked at Cobra, who was already extremely worried, and said, "Your Majesty, why are you so worried that the rebels will attack sooner or later? We can just mobilize and prepare step by step." Cobra looked at the long red carpet in front of him and said, "In addition to worrying about the rebel army, I always feel that there is a mysterious force that is performing invisible actions in the dark. They even caused this civil war catastrophe. Dancing fans have nothing to do with Cobra, they are so-called behind the scenes." Cobra had long suspected this. So many dancers appeared in Alabasta in the first place, it was definitely not accidental, or caused by ordinary gangster smuggling. Even Princess Vivi and Akaram went overseas to investigate together. Thinking of this, Cobra thought about his daughter Vivi, whom he had not seen for several years. At this time, the door of the political hall was suddenly opened. Bell and Run Fast appeared in front. Cobra looked in surprise at the fast runner beside Bell. Before he could speak, Bell took the lead and walked forward quickly and said, "Your Majesty, Princess Vivi has arrived in Alabasta, but I need to run fast and send her a message first." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 162. The guy running fast next to Bell also opened his mouth and shouted, "Gah!" After Cobra heard the news, his body trembled for a while. His heart beat violently. "Viv, she returned to Alabasta," Cobra said with a trembling voice. Bell and the runner quickly walked to the front of Cobra. Cobra leapt directly from the throne and observed with his own eyes how fast he ran. This fast-running horse is indeed Wai's mount, named Kalu. Bell continued to quickly take out Wai's sealed letter and the phone bug. "Your Majesty, the princess ran away and brought a letter and a phone bug," Bell said. Cobra took the letter very eagerly. "Open the envelope, and inside is a blank sheet of paper with words written all over it." "It is indeed Vivi's, she has indeed returned to Alabasta," Cobra said excitedly. The letter contained information about the secret conspiracy of the Baroque studio and about Crocodile's bad behavior. And Wai enlisted the help of a group of friends. After seeing the content of the letter, Cobra's expression changed from the excitement just now to a complicated one, even a little angry. Gaka and Bell glanced at each other. "Your Majesty, how are you doing?" Jaka asked. Cobra raised his head and said with a long sigh, "It turned out to be like this. Crocodile conspired to overthrow Alabasta, and he caused this civil war." Crocodile Jaka's expression became serious. "Yes, it's Crocodile. Under the cover of His Majesty Shishibukai, he has been lurking in Alabasta for many years for this conspiracy to take Alabasta," Cobra said very seriously. In fact, Cobra once doubted Crocodile, but he also doubted the Revolutionary Army. They even sent Jaka to investigate, and it turned out that no one in the Revolutionary Army was in Alabasta. Crocodile is also concentrating on running the industry in the Rainy Land, and whether it is fighting pirates. Now everything is revealed. Wai personally sneaked into Baroque studio with Akaram and found out that the culprit behind the scenes was Crocodile. Jaka suddenly asked again, "This is not so strange. Although Crocodile was canonized by the world government as the King's Kaiwilhe, he is also an ambitious man. I have seen him. Hidden Secrets of the Invisible." "That's right, Your Majesty." "Is Akaram back with Princess Wai now?" Asked by him, Cobra's expression became very complicated again. He turned to look at Gaka and Bell. "Akaram, the letter said that in order to protect Wai and the others, the ship he was on was blown up," Cobra said with great difficulty. The news was like a bolt from the blue, shocking both Bell and Gaka. Both of their eyes were full of disbelief. "Why is Akaram dead?" Jaka said in shock. "Akaram is actually going to die." "Wait, Your Majesty. Has Princess Wai confirmed that she has seen his body?" Bell asked again. Cobra said with a heavy expression. Vivi said in the letter that there was a shocking explosion on the ship Akaram was traveling on. His whereabouts are unknown. Jaka and Bel's faces were heavy, and in this case, they were basically close to death. In the past, the three guard ministers of Ikaram, Jaka, and Bel acted as the three pillars of King Cobra and the kingdom of Alabasta. The scene is vivid. The three guardian ministers risked their lives for the sake of the kingdom and saved the kingdom from danger. Although the three of them are very serious in court, they are as close as brothers in their hearts. Now, such an accident happened in Ikaram. Both Jaka and Bale felt extremely heavy. One of the three pillars has already collapsed. Akaram, Jaka said painfully. Bel quickly gave him a shoulder and said, "We can't do anything about what happened to Jakikalam, but now the two of us are brave enough to support everything. Help His Majesty Cobra defeat the enemy." Gaka looked at Bel full of grief and indignation, and said, "Well, we must continue to support everything." The two guard ministers bravely looked at Cobra. "Your Majesty, now that it is confirmed that Crocodile is the murderer behind the scenes, we need to take action. Please give the order," the two people said together. Cobra looked at the two security ministers. He was silent for a while and continued, "Crocodile has a criminal group called Baroque Studio. This group has a large number of powerful killers, and they may be lurking in the king's army, and the rebels are waiting for an opportunity to take action. But now we must find a way to defeat the enemy. By the way, Wei said that we can still contact her by phone." Bell handed the phone bug to Cobra again. Cobra picked up the phone bug and started communicating. Father Wei's voice came to her after many years. Wei Cobra's voice was very excited. "Father, I am in Catalia now. You should also read the contents of the letter. I have now reached an agreement with the rebel army, and they are willing to cease fighting for a while. But you also need to cease fighting on your side," Wei said. "You said a truce, and I have no problem with a truce. The king's army has been on the defensive all along. As long as the rebel army doesn't attack, there will be no fighting here," Cobra said. "As long as there is a truce, it's fine. But you still need to pay attention to safety. Because the Baroque Studio may infiltrate various forces, including the king's army. Even your side is not safe," Wei said. "Don't worry, I have Jiaka and Bell guarding here. There are hundreds of thousands of troops, don't worry," Cobra said. "Then be careful, after all, the Baroque Studio is far beyond our imagination. So I hope that the father will always be on guard." Wei's tone was a little anxious. "Father is supposed to be careful here, and Wei, you should be careful too. You are in Catalia now, which is the stronghold of the rebel army. You should hurry back to the capital," Cobra said. Cobra is well aware that the civil war has been going on for so many years now. Many people who hated him would definitely have the intention of harming Wei. "Don't worry, I have friends here to protect me. They are very strong. And the high-level rebel army is also closely guarding us. They also know of Crocodile's conspiracy and are willing to cease fighting with us," Wei said. "Then you have to be careful," Cobra said. He now knows very well that since Wei dares to go deep into the Baroque Studio, she is not afraid of these dangers. And now that the rebels are willing to cease fighting, they will also pay attention to Wei's safety. More importantly, Wei can decide everything by herself and he can't change it. "Father, both the king's army and the rebel army are willing to cease fighting, so we need to see how my friends deal with Crocodile," Wei said. "Those friends of yours?" Cobra was a little suspicious. "Please don't worry, they are very powerful. Before the Revolutionary War of the Drum Country, a few of them eradicated Wapali," Wei said. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Li A Dream. Chapter 163. Hearing this, Cobra was surprised for a while. "Why did you say that your friends participated in the Revolutionary War of the Drum Country and eradicated Wapol?" Cobra asked in surprise. "Exactly, My friends are very powerful. A few of them defeated thousands of Wapol's elite troops and killed Wapol himself, Wai Wei said. Although Cobra has been busy with his country's affairs for a long time, he also knows something about the magnetic drum country. In addition to meeting the tyrant at the World Conference, we also know that the Drum Kingdom has transformed from Wapoli into a super-industrial power, and it has also purchased arms on a large scale, possessing a powerful military force that is far out of proportion to its own size. Moreover, it is said that Wapol himself is also a devil fruit-capable person, and he is very effective in combat. But just like that, Wapoli and his army were wiped out by some of Wai Wei's friends. This is enough to show the strength of the friends Wai Wei met. That's true. Your friend is indeed very powerful. But you still have to be careful, Cobra said. Father, several of my friends are heading towards the rainy land from Xingang Kingdom, preparing to destroy Crocodile, Wai Wei said. The opponent they want to destroy, Crocodile, is one of the 7 warriors under the king. In this case, I must provide them with help, Cobra said suddenly. Father, don't act rashly, and contact them after they have news. Moreover, the Baroque studio is secretly sabotaging. Now we need to temporarily stabilize the situation, Wai Wei said. Wai Wei, okay. But I will be prepared. Once needed, we will immediately provide strong support, Cobra said. Father, the situation is critical now. So don't take it lightly, Wai Wei said. Okay, Vivi, Cobra said. After an important conversation, both parties also hung up the phone. Cobra was now happy but troubled. The problem is complicated, but there is still hope. Cobra looked at Jaka and Bell again. Your Majesty, please instruct now, the two said together. Now we must stabilize first and take strict precautions. The situation is very complicated now, but the key to unlock all of this lies with a few of Vivi's friends. Now you listen to my orders. Cobra's expression suddenly became very serious. Please order, Bell and Gaka said together. Jaka, you are now ordering the king's army in Aruba and nearby cities to strictly train. Prepare for battle. And start planning a combat plan to attack the rainy land. Bell, you start to strengthen the attack on all suspicious events and characters in Aruba. Investigate, try to find out how many eyes and ears have been arranged in the Baroque studio. Cobra gave the order. Jaka accepts His Majesty's order and vows to complete the task to the death. Jaka knelt down to accept the order. Bell accepts His Majesty's order and resolutely completes the task. Bell half knelt down to accept the order. Jaka and Bell went down quickly and began to carry out the order. Cobra was back on the throne, and he looked to the front door where Bell and Jaka went out to complete a very important mission. His gaze turned to the fast-running Karu standing on the red carpet in front of him. Run fast, come on. I want to ask you about Vivi and his friends, Cobra said with a very friendly face again. Run as fast as you can, Yelga, and step forward. Bell and Jaka had already walked out of the gate of the palace quickly, and the two of them stood in front of the gate together, looking towards the steps ahead. Bell, we will help Ikaram carry out his will, Gaka said firmly. No problem, Bell said in a voice like the cry of a falcon. Jaka quickly set off towards the bottom of the steps and began to complete the mission. Bell changed into a falcon form and began to fly into the air. One suppresses everything like a jackal on land, and the other scouts everything in the sky like a giant falcon. Now it no longer matters whether Ikaram is alive or dead. What matters is that the will of the three people must be realized. That is, defend the kingdom of Alabasta to the death. It is now night in Arubana, and there is no trace of the afterglow in the sky. But there are still warriors guarding the land. The situation has entered into stability, at least the civil war has temporarily eased. But in the rainy land of the desert city deep in the northwest of Alabasta. In this city that was still peaceful during the war, the top floor of the huge pyramid-like building at the end of the commercial street. Crocodile was sitting on the sofa at this time, watching the important documents sent by agents from all over the place. These documents are compiled by the Vice President, all Sundays. However, Crocodile was suspicious by nature. In addition to asking him to sort things out all Sunday, he also asked some elite agents to report to him personally. At this time, Crocodile's face was gloomy. Although the light in the room was already dim, his face was even more gloomy at this time. He grabbed a telegram document from the report in his hand. This was sent by the agent who was ambushing in Katla. The above clearly stated that the high-level rebel army was persuaded by the sudden appearance of Princess Wai to stop the war. The inside story of Crocodile and Baroque Studios was also exposed. Although it was not announced on a large scale, it has already caused extremely serious harm. And since Princess Wai showed up and even the rebel army was persuaded, then the king's army must have been notified by her. Seeing all the years of hard work, she was about to have a miscarriage. How could this be? Princess Wai has successfully arrived. And she began to reveal the truth about me. Crocodile gripped the document angrily. However, he still rearranged the files sensibly. Crocodile picked up another document, which contained information about the kingdom's new port. The 2 armed airships dispatched were destroyed and both Point 6 and Mother's Day were killed. Trash, useless things, Crocodile said angrily. The situation was going well a few days ago, but everything changed after Princess Wai arrived. And according to the investigation, it was confirmed that the people from Kingdom Xingang had once traveled with Princess Wai. Now Princess Vivi and her friends are enough to pose a deadly threat to Crocodile's plot. Crocodile felt himself passive for the first time since the Alabasta Civil War that secretly triggered the havoc a few years ago. Just as Crocodile was annoyed for a while, a figure walked into the large room again. "Boss, I have something to report now." The person who came was a tall girl with a somewhat dark temperament. "All Sunday." Crocodile tried his best to calm down and looked at her. "Okay, let's talk," Crocodile said. Quanzhou walked up to him and looked at him with those bottomless eyes that seemed to be able to see through people. "Boss, I think you are very dissatisfied with the failure of Kingdom Xingang and the appearance of Princess Wai. But now there is news. In addition to the opponents we face, there is also one of the most powerful powers involved in this civil war." Quan Sunday said. "What?" Crocodile asked in a low voice. "Based on our investigation, it seems that the World Government's Intelligence Organization has investigated us," Jian said on Sunday. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Li A Dream. Chapter 164. After Crocodile heard the news, his eyes became even more gloomy. "What do you mean the World Government's Intelligence Organization has investigated us?" Crocodile asked. Quanzhou nodded and said, "Yes, according to our intelligence, there is a mysterious force secretly investigating us. That is the intelligence agency of the world government. And it is the intelligence agency of the CP series. I don't know exactly which CP it is. But they have already lurked in Alabasta and noticed us. Even your identity, boss, and the missile secrets of Baroque Studio are known to the other party." After saying this, Quan Sunday looked at Crocodile with his deep eyes, waiting for his reaction. Crocodile stood up from his seat on the sofa and began to walk around the hall. He walked to the window and looked out. It was already late at night in Alabasta. The night sky outside was very clear and the stars were twinkling. "What was supposed to come finally came," Crocodile said. He then continued, "Alabasta is, after all, one of the largest affiliated countries under the world government. Even the royal family was one of the 20 families that founded the world government at the beginning, but they did not live in the holy land of Mary Joel. Instead, he chose to continue to govern his own kingdom. A large-scale civil war occurred in such an important country, and it was impossible for the world government to take no action. On Sunday, the reason why I chose to provoke the Alabasta Civil War in these years, do you know why?" Quanzhou had an extremely quiet expression and said, "Please explain." That's precisely because the Revolutionary Army is inciting rebellions everywhere. As the biggest threat to the world government, the Revolutionary Army has been carrying out various activities in the Four Seas and the Great Route. They are completely able to shake the foundation of the world government's rule. In this way, the world government can the main force and other resources under his command were devoted to the encirclement and suppression of the Revolutionary Army. In addition, the pirates everywhere were very active, and the world government was even more exhausted. Therefore, I officially carried out the long-planned plan in the past few years. Action. But after all, Alabasta is still a very important country under the world government, but because the Navy has important tasks everywhere, and the scale of the Alabasta Civil War is unstoppable without 100,000 Navy. So they still sent a powerful CP agent. But which CP agent it is, have you really not found it? Crocodile said. Quan Zhou's expression remained calm as he said, we tried our best to pursue it, but the other party's intelligence hiding ability was very good, and we did not discover the real details of the other party. Crocodile sighed and said, you know, there are 1 to 8 organizations in the camp series of agents. Each one is full of vitality and has amazing intelligence capabilities. But there is one most terrifying thing that has not surfaced, and that is the extreme CP9 that only a few people can know. When Crocodile said this, even Quan Sunday, who had always been calm and composed, trembled, and the corners of his mouth twitched. She thought of that unforgettable experience, but she immediately suppressed it and regained her composure. Crocodile seemed to notice something strange about the other party, but he didn't care. He continued, this CP9 is the most elite intelligence organization of the world government. Only a few people know about it. Its combat power can compete with the other 8 CP series organizations combined. However, the existence of CP9 will still leak to some extent. Of course. Such a powerful intelligence organization will not appear in Alabasta. They must be used to deal with the Revolutionary Army. Anyway, it is certain now. An intelligence organization in CP Series 1 to 8 has been targeting us in Alabasta. It is possible that the world government is aware of our actions. Quan Sunday still tried to remain calm and said, Boss, what are our next steps? Crocodile turned his head to look at her, and said, now we have fallen into a passive position. Now that the civil war in Alabasta has restabilized, the two sides are just confronting each other. The world government is also eyeing us. And Princess Wei and some of her unknown accomplices are fighting against us together. Among them, the forces of the world government cannot worry too much for the time being, because it takes a long time for them to react and act effectively. The immediate urgency is to continue to reignite the civil war in Alabasta and kill Princess Vivi and her companions. Quan Sunday looked at Crocodile and said, I understand. Crocodile turned his body completely this time and looked at Sunday. This time, Plan G is officially launched, Crocodile said. As ordered, Quan Sunday said. Then, retire all Sunday. Crocodile returned to the sofa, sat there and picked up a bottle of wine. Crocodile uncorked the wine bottle and poured the red wine inside into his hand. Those delicious drinks fell into his palm as if they had disappeared. Alabasta will not stop bleeding, just like the red wine flowing into the sand, Crocodile said in a low voice. Outside this huge pyramid building, the night sky in the rainy land is very peaceful, but it contains endless conspiracy and evil. It's time for the sun to rise again. In Katlaya, tens of thousands of soldiers and people in the stronghold of the rebel army are still preparing various supplies. Because of the orders from the top of the rebel army, most people continued to prepare weapons, food, and medicine, as well as various equipment, horses, and a large number of supplies. Even if some people are dissatisfied with the extension of the rest period, the high level the time to attack is not ripe is still barely justified. After all, Arubana and the surrounding cities have very strong defenses. Although the rebel army is on the offensive, it is still difficult to capture the target. During this time, more cannons and guns can be cast, and more food and medicine can be stored. In a heavily guarded house in the busy city of Katlia, Waiwei, Sanji, Nami, and several accompanying officers had breakfast in the hall of the room. Come on, everyone. Let you have a taste of my craft. Sanji raised the plate with both hands and brought out plates of breakfast. Toast, omelets, baked cakes, coffee and some grilled sea fish were served on the table. The accompanying officers and Nami were already very happy to enjoy Sanji's exquisite cooking. It tastes really good, an officer praised after eating Sanji's toast. It's really good. Even breakfast can be made so well, another officer said while eating grilled sea fish. An officer with his mouth full of omelette muttered, such a simple dish, ba, can be made so exquisitely in terms of heat and seasoning. Ba chirp chirp. Are you so surprised? We eat these foods every day, Nami said with a relaxed and pleasant smile. Really? You are so happy, an officer said enviously. Sanji came to the hall from the kitchen again, this time with a large fruit platter in his hand. Everyone, after finishing the other breakfasts, we need to clear our mouths with a fruit platter, Sanji said. A fruit platter was placed on the table, with apples, bananas, figs, chestnuts, dates, and prickly pears. There are also fruits from unknown desert regions. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 165. After seeing this variety of fruit platter, Nami and many officers cheered. Wow, so many fruits, Nami said happily. After hearing the praise, Sanji also said with a smile on his face, Miss Nami, it's great that you are satisfied with my cooking. It's delicious. Sanji, I'm not complimenting you. It's really delicious. Nami picked up a piece of prickly pear and said while chewing. It's really great, Miss Nami, please continue to enjoy it. Everyone else will also enjoy it. And Waiwei? Sanji suddenly looked at Vivi. Waiwei was sitting on a chair at the table, drinking coffee in silence. Although Vivi seemed very quiet on the surface, Sanji could still see the bitterness in her heart. Vivi, eat more too. Sanji walked to Vivi's side and said. Waiwei smiled, looked at Sanji and said, thank you, Sanji. I will eat more. By the way, the coffee you make is very good. Sanji is very clear, although the situation is basically stable now. But there are still threats. Crocodile and Baroque Studios are still ready to attack. Under such circumstances, Waiwei was naturally uneasy. Who knows what terrible plot Crocodile is plotting? Outside this building, a large number of rebel soldiers are defending. Koza personally ordered that their safety be strictly guarded. In an alley more than 100 meters away from this building, two figures are moving here. Both figures wear cloaks that cover their bodies and faces. Isn't that person here yet, my dear? Gwigwigwa, one of the people spoke in the voice of a young woman. After all, he is one of the few high-level agents. He will definitely arrive. Ha ha ha, another person spoke, his voice was that of a middle-aged uncle. The two of them waited together for a few more minutes, when a voice suddenly came from above the two of them. Sorry to keep you waiting. Suddenly a figure jumped in front of them from above. The other party was also wearing a cloak, and then the person who came threw the cloak away. The person who appeared in front of them was a tall and slender man wearing ballet shoes on his feet. A man dressed in stage costume on the hips and upper body, wearing a large coat with two swan heads on it. Because the face of this visitor is heavily made up, he looks like an actor and an artist. Even like a man and a woman. The two of them quickly said respectfully, Sir, we are waiting for your arrival. The visitor is none other than a senior agent from Baroque Studio, a dignified point 2. Point 2. It is different from other high-level agent combinations. Other senior agents, one man and one woman, work in pairs. But point 2 is a she-male, neither male nor female, so he only needs to act alone. Hey, you two have been waiting for a long time. Thank you so much for your hard work. I feel so sorry for you. Point 2 said with a wink to the two of them. These two also threw away their cloaks. The person on the left is a young woman, wearing an exaggerated suit with a strong frog style. Very sexy exposure. The head is a frog hood, the upper body is a frog shirt, the lower body is a frog skirt, and the feet are flippers. Those faces are as youthful and cute as a frog. The limbs are also extremely slender. The man on the right is a middle-aged man, wearing a long purple coat. Wear goggles. The whole body was tightly covered except the head and hands. There was an exaggerated white hair on the head, but it was arranged very delicately. His chin is surprisingly long. A pair of eyes is always with a very complacent smile. Father's Day, I will listen to your instructions, sir, the young woman said. Point 7 I will listen to your instructions, sir, the middle-aged uncle said. Point 2 looks towards point 7 and Father's Day. These two people are also the top-notch people in Baroque Studios among the middle-level agents after the senior agents. They are also good at long-distance assassination, which senior agents do not have. Okay, there are important things at hand now. You two don't need to be polite. Point 2 said. Point 2 He is quite polite when doing things, unlike some other senior agents. This made it easier for the two of them. Then Sir 2, what kind of battle are we going to do? Ha ha ha. 7 said. Our boss asked us to carry out Plan G specifically. He asked us to do two things. First, assassinate the leader of the rebel army, and then frame the blame on the king's army. Second, kill Princess Wei and her friends. Point 2 said. After hearing this, both Point 7 and Father's Day were silent and thinking. This is not easy. But we can consider assassinating the leader of the rebel army. Gwigwigwa Father's Day said. Point 2 winked, and then said, that's enough. Our actions are based on division of labor. You two are responsible for assassinating the leader of the rebel army, the man named Kosha. I am responsible for killing Princess Wei and her companions. Point 7 After hearing this, he felt that there was no problem and said, we will complete the task this way. But the other party is the leader of the rebel army after all, and assassination is not that easy. So you must do your best. And you must not forget to frame the king's army. Point 2 said. No problem. We are a super assassin duo capable of killing thousands of people. Gwigwigwa Father's Day said proudly. Never underestimate the enemy. Ha ha ha. Point 7 said. Point 2 continued to warn, I wish you success. The slave family needs to leave here quickly. After saying that, Point 2 jumped up and disappeared. Point 7 and Father's Day looked at each other. As expected of Sir Point 2, you really acted quickly. Ha ha ha. Point 7 said. It is said that his boxing and kicking skills are very powerful. Gwigwigwa said Father's Day. Point 7 added, but we are not bad either. In Baroque Studio, except for Point 6 and Mother's Day who were killed in the previous battle, we are only second to the senior agents. Ha ha ha. Father's Day blinked and said, that's right, if we talk about sniping, no one in Baroque Studio can match it. Point 7 turned around again and said, okay, let's prepare to look for opportunities to assassinate the rebel leader Kosha. However, we still need to think about how to frame the king's army. Father's Day said. Yes, this requires some preparation. Point 7 said. The two men acted together and began to prepare to assassinate the rebel leader Kosha, which was the most critical step in Plan G. In Baroque Studio, Point 7 and Father's Day are two special agents responsible for long-range sniper assassinations. They have super powerful sniper capabilities. The accuracy of the marksmanship is unimaginable. When the two of them act together, there is no time to fail. And point 2 is to find a way to kill Princess Vivi and her partners Sanji and Nami. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 166. Point 2 left point 7 and after Father's Day, he quickly jumped on the top of the building, and finally came to the building where Princess Vivi and Sanji lived. In this group of buildings, a large number of rebel soldiers are guarding here. The front of the building, as well as the sides and back, are protected by the rebel army. There are so many people, it's really a headache. But don't worry. I'll keep an eye on her for a while. As long as she doesn't go to other places, point 2 said. Now for point 2, just watch more. And to complete plan G, you need to prioritize assassinating Kosa. A very good plan comes from point 2's mind. By the way, according to the report of our intelligence personnel, Kosa and the rebel high UPS did not make any big announcement about Princess Weiwei's mediation. So once Kosa is assassinated and blamed on the king's army, all he needs to do is claim that Princess Weiwei is here. If so, many rebels will be triggered to kill Princess Weiwei. I don't have to do anything at all. The new family is so smart, point 2 said very narcissistically. The ladyboy continued to observe the building where Weiwei and the others lived, and considered how to spread the word when the time came. A conspiracy is afoot in Katla. But the rebel army didn't know it at all. On the road leading to the King's Renaissance Square in Katrea, the leader of the rebel army, Kosa, was riding on a strong horse. Several cadres of the rebel army also followed on horseback. Many people and rebel soldiers along the street were in awe when they saw him. What is the Kosa leader going to do again? Our great leader. Kosa is really heroic, and he is able to take on such a heavy responsibility at such a young age. Compared to that old fool Cobra, our Kosa is truly a hero. But I really hope he can issue another combat order soon. I really want to drive that old tyrant off the throne. Many people and soldiers are talking about Kosa. Besides being young and promising, he is still very responsible. His decisions are strictly considered and never let the rebel army shed blood in vain. In fact, Kosa was not the leader of the rebel army at the beginning, but stood out in the brutal civil war, successfully won the support of the main rebel leaders with his ability and sincerity, and finally became the leader of the rebel army. After Kosa became the leader of the rebel army, it really gradually dominated the situation of the civil war. Even a large number of the king's army turned against Kosa's plan and turned into a rebel army. Even the king's army, which was on the offensive in the early part of the civil war, now has to defend the area around Arubana. Kosa and his party rode on their horses and marched quickly towards the King's Renaissance Square. The group arrived at King's Renaissance Square. This wide square is the largest square in Cataleya, where thousands of people can be accommodated. After the rebel army used Katla as their base camp, they used it as a place for propaganda. Telephone bugs were also used to broadcast to more areas. Kosa got off his horse, and walked to the side of the high platform where he was in charge of preaching together with the cadres of his entourage. This tall platform used for preaching is fully 50 meters high. When preaching on it, coupled with a telephone amplification, it can be very powerful. The rebel officer in charge of the high platform saw that Kausha had arrived in person, and said respectfully, "Chief Kausha, if you have any orders to come here, please feel free to tell me." Kosa looked at him and then at the high platform, and said, "I'm here to preach something to the people. There is no need to deliberately mobilize, just let them listen to as many people as there are in this square. But to the people in other areas the broadcast phone bug is still on." "Okay, as ordered," said the officer. The officer ordered his men to go down and get ready. Kosa began to climb the high platform. As the steps under his feet were stepped up one after another, Kosa was getting closer and closer to the top of the high platform. Finally crossing the long stairs, Kosa finally reached the top of the platform. At the top, here is a square of about 100 square meters. Here Kosa is delivering that great speech. Kosa looked at the square below. Every time he gave a speech in the past, there were huge crowds of people below. And once he appeared on the stage, there was a wave of applause. In addition to his wonderful speeches, there is also his powerful personal charm. Now even if there is no deliberate mobilization, there are thousands of people in the square below. Next to Kosa there are two rebels who are in charge of preparing the amplified phone bug and the radio phone bug. Let me ask how long it will take to officially start, Kosa said in a gentle tone. The two rebels looked at each other and said, it will take about 30 minutes. Please wait. Kosa also looked at the sky. It was already morning here, and the sun was already shining. The bright sun shines in the city of Katla. Shine on this square. The vicissitudes of the civil war for many years seem to have branded these buildings, which gives people infinite emotion. The hot and dry wind blows around, and you can see everything about Katla clearly from here. Many of those comrades who fought so hard have passed away. The original ideal is still going forward. However, all these struggles were planned by a conspirator, Crocodile. Thinking about all this makes people feel extremely sad and angry. However, this fact cannot be made public in any case. Because that means that the huge sacrifices made in the past few years have been in vain, and will instead cause greater chaos. Today, the speech Kosa needs to give is to further stabilize the mood of the people and soldiers. After all, they had been mobilized many times before, and their morale was already high. Now he has issued an order to extend the rest period, so that he can calm down many people's dissatisfaction by giving a speech in person. On the plaza below, some of the populace recognized Kosa. Through the binoculars, they saw that it was Kosa, the great young leader of the rebel army whom they had admired for a long time. One word spread the word, and soon more people and rebel soldiers came to the square. Soon the original thousands became tens of thousands. Kosa looked down at the people and soldiers who had become extremely lively again, and also sighed. No matter what, he must stabilize the situation. Chief Kosa. The speech can now be made, said the rebel officer in charge of the loudspeaker bug on the high platform. Broadcasting to various places is also good, another rebel officer in charge of broadcasting the phone bug also said. Kosa nodded and said, okay. Kosa strode forward a few more steps, so that everyone in the square below could see him. The two rebels placed the amplified phone bug and the broadcast phone bug beside him, and they were always paying attention to adjustments. Dear citizens and fighters, I am the leader Kosa. Kosa's resolute and resonant voice sounded. After the tens of thousands of people and soldiers below heard Kosa's voice, they quickly became quiet. Then there was an earth-shattering applause.